welcome to the From Nature to Nurture podcast. I am your host, Danielle, and I'm here today with episode 23. A few caveats at the top of this. I barely slept last night, and I honestly don't feel very well just because of the lack of sleep. So you might hear that in my voice. I might be a little lower energy today. But also on the opposite side, my dogs are extra crazy, and I have been trying to record this podcast for the last hour, but they keep piping up as soon as I hit record, so we are just going with it, so you may hear dogs in the background. So today we are talking about nettle, and it's very appropriate for me to talk about nettle today because of me being super tired. And the biggest thing that nettle is known for is being really nutrient dense. And what happens when you're exhausted, your body has a hard time running and like keeping you alive, so you're going through minerals a lot faster. So today I'm sitting here with a tea blend that I made up just for this podcast that is nettle, lemongrass, and ginger to help give me a little bit of energy, give me some vitamins and minerals, and get me through the day. So if you have been listening to my podcast for a while, you know how these herbal profiles go. We'll start with a medicinal episode all about the physical medicine of this plant, and then the next episode will be all about the folklore. And I'm really excited because nettle has some beautiful folklore. I'll be reading you some stories, and there's so many fun little like what's the word? Little sayings about nettle. So I'm really excited to share that one. But today we are going to focus on the medicine. Now, the botanical name for nettles is Urtica dioica, or you might know it as stinging nettle or wild nettle. But like I said, nettle is one of the most nutrient-dense plants around today. There are a lot of long-standing folk remedies around nettle, and it has been a big part of humanity for numerous reasons. It's a plant that's often worked with in food as well as medicine, so it's a beautiful way of how I like to talk about food as medicine and incorporating your herbals into your daily routines instead of just when you need them. And with nettle being so nutrient dense, that's something that most of us are missing, right? Our modern food system is wild and lacking a lot of minerals and vitality, and nettle is a wonderful way to be able to supplement that while also still being connected to the land around you. Nettle is also a very, very easy plant to grow, at least in my region, but it enjoys a very wide range of regions. So we're looking at anywhere from a zone 3 to a 10, and they prefer to be a little wet and can survive in partly shade to full sun. My nettles are in full sun and they thrive. I have so much nettle to harvest every year, and they just keep growing and growing and growing, and they're so abundant. It's one of the plants that I recommend beginner herbalists growing because it's a really easy one to grow, but also it's a staple in my herbal practice. And we'll get into all the different ways that I work with it. But I wanted to share because it is a really easy plant to grow. And sometimes when you're first starting your herbal journey, you want to grow all of the things, but it's really hard to try to figure out what plants to grow together and what can go in full sun and what can go in partial sun and all of the different like ins and outs of the physicalness of the growing. And nettle is a really easy one and done, comes back every year, doesn't take a lot of work type of plant. So wonderful for beginners. So we're going to get into the herbal energetics and the herbal actions now. So as a reminder, herbal energetics tell you how a plant works in terms of the tissues in your body. So we're looking at if it is tonifying or tightening or relaxing, if it is cooling or warming, or if it is drying or moistening. And then the taste will also kind of tell you a bit about the chemical makeup of the plant. So nettle is salty and sweet, and it is earthy, cooling, drying, and tonifying. So that saltiness right at the top tells you that it's very high in minerals. And then going into the herbal actions, remember herbal actions tell you how the plants act on your body. So, one of the biggest things that we see with nettles is that it is a diuretic. So, diuretics help to expel the water from our tissues and drain excess moisture. This can increase urination. Um, but what's fun with nettles is that heavy urination can decrease potassium levels, but nettle is really high in potassium. So, this is a beautiful example of balance in nature. Often in the medical world, we'll see that potassium supplementation is given to people who are taking um, chemical diuretics to help balance that out. But that's part of what we're missing in the modern medical system is that we have these plants that already have this balance built into them. We don't need to just extract one chemical compound of it. But diuretics can be super helpful if you have excess moisture in your body, if you have swelling or edema. Great to help with your lymphatic system to kind of help flush everything out. That's also why nettles is one of my favorite early spring greens because they come up really early in the season and they're giving you that high dose of minerals that you've probably had less of during the winter time and helping to kind of clean out your system to get ready for this spring renewal and all the new activities and foods and everything that comes with the warmer seasons. So, when we are talking about the mineral content of nettles, like I said, it's very, very high. So, it's rich in iron, protein, chlorophyll, vitamin C, dietary fiber, potassium, silica, calcium, and so many others. So, nettle is a wonderful food additive or a seasoning additive. We'll talk about the preparations at the end, but as you guys are listening to this, I want you to think about different ways that you can work with nettle because, like I said, easy to grow, also easy to source and generally safe for everyone. So wonderful, wonderful plant. The other big way that you will see people working with nettle, especially this time of year, is for allergies. So, nettle is high in formic acid, which works as a antihistamine. Now, this is only possible through a fresh tincture, so dried nettle is not going to work. But like I said, nettle starts growing really early in the season, so it's easy for you to make a fresh tincture of it and have it ready before you really need it, or have some from last year. For example, I started my allergy tincture, I think in February of this year. And I haven't had very many issues yet, which is pretty wild. I have crazy spring seasonal allergies every year, but that's something that I have been working on over the past year, where I've been working on my immune response and keeping my triggers low so that by the time I get into this year, I'm not suffering because it's the most beautiful time of the year when you want to be outside. But if you can't breathe and you keep sneezing, you're not going to want to go explore beautiful nature. So, fresh tincture of nettle, something I always have on hand. We'll get into percentages and stuff later, but the formic acid in it, super, super helpful. Um, and so, as terms of some other herbal actions, it is an alterative, so helping to open our channels of elimination, facilitate expulsion of waste products, and adjust or alter the metabolic function. So, this includes absorption and distribution of nutrients as well as elimination of waste products. It helps to build the blood through the mineral rich content and helps to cleanse and detoxify the blood because of that alterative action. So, kind of going back to helping with the lymphatic system, helping to cleanse our body, get everything flowing properly so that we can properly absorb all the other nutrients and keep being healthy. It's also an astringent, so that's where we get kind of that drying and tonifying effect from earlier when we are looking at the herbal actions. So, astringents help to bring extra tone to intestines, uterus, blood vessels, different sort of tissues like that. It's great for leaky gut, for uterine bleeding or prolapse, wonderful for post childbirth, and for people with high or low blood pressure to be able to regulate the tonality of your blood vessels. Um, Nettle is wonderful for women who bleed specifically because of the high iron content. Nettle is a plant that I work with coming up to my bleed every month. Like I'll start drinking nettle tea a few days before to kind of help One, like with the tonifying there with like my uterus to help with the contractions, to help build the blood, to help build the iron. I'm someone who feels really lightheaded on their periods. So this has helped a lot to where that's not as big of an issue anymore. And then also when you're pregnant to help build the blood before giving birth, when you then lose a bunch of blood, and then after birth, when you are rebuilding your blood from birth. So beautiful, beautiful plant for blood related things and for bleeding. And then it's also a inflammation modulator. The chlorophyll helps to cool and alkalize the tissues, and helps with, we talked about with the formic acid for the allergies, but helping with inflammation for the whole system as well. And then it is a kidney trophorestorative. So trophorestoratives help to lend more vitality and function to different areas. So with this being a kidney trophorestorative, this is for the seeds specifically. The seeds of nettle can help with kidney damage, failure, dialysis, or other major problems in the structure function of the kidneys. So lending more energy and vitality and healing to those areas so that they can effectively do their job, which obviously would be very important with any sort of kidney damage. Now, here's an herbal action that you don't hear about a lot in general, but is particularly helpful when it comes to nettle, and that is called the rubefacient. Now, this is a topical irritant that increases blood flow and circulation, which helps to lessen pain and bring more healing into that area. So, stinging nettle, right? So, stinging nettle, the reason that it stings is it has these little tiny hairs that are hollow like needles that obviously irritate the skin just by poking them, but then they also release a little bit of histamine, so giving us that itchy, stingy, red, burning kind of reaction. Now, there's a way to work with fresh nettles that is particularly helpful for stiff, tight, swollen, achy joints, arthritis, sore muscles, um, old old injuries that act up like old breaks and sprains, where you basically flog or thrash yourself with the nettles. Now, this type of treatment can relieve pain for up to 8 days because you are bringing your body's immune response to that area to bring in new blood, bring in antibodies, bring in all sorts of supports to help fight off that kind of like intrusion, right? So it sounds really really violent in a way, especially when you use the word flogging. Um, but it has been shown to be particularly helpful with arthritis or people who have repeated injuries in an area that's always acting up. Now, this is also a wonderful plant for liver detoxification, and that is going back to that drying, cooling, tonifying herbal actions or herbal energetics there. And going back to the like alterative and astringency. So a lot of these different herbal actions and herbal energetics go a lot hand in hand. You'll see a lot of cooling plants are also diuretics and different things like that. So as you are continuing through your herbal studies, you'll start seeing these different patterns, and it'll be easier and easier for you to see what plants pair well together and how they would work well together. So, nettle is a plant that is generally regarded as safe for most people, with the one caveat being take a second thought if you have kidney stones, because it is already working pretty heavily on the kidneys. It could be contraindicated there because you're working to restore kidney health when you need to be releasing kidney stones. So, something to think about there. But outside of that, because nettle is really safe, really high in minerals, I add it to a lot of things. Nettle is in most of my tea blends, and I add it to food a lot as well in ways of like seasoning salts or even oxymels, different things like that to get those extra benefits because, like I said, we all need the extra minerals. But let's look into some specific ways that you can work with nettle. So we already talked a little bit about the fresh tincture. So this would be a 1-to-3 ratio, and you would tincture it at 50 to 60%, and then you can dilute it down afterwards to a 40 to 50% if that alcohol content is too strong for you in terms of ingesting it. And in terms of dosing, it's different person to person and how bad your allergies are and if that's specifically what you're using it for. But I personally um take 2 droppers of it a day during the high allergy seasons. Leading up, I will kind of slowly increase through the end of winter into early spring, where I'm having like 1 dropper a day, maybe one every other day, and just slowly increase. And then if I do get into the height of allergy season, they start picking up, then I will increase my tinctures throughout the day, where I'll be taking it every few hours to help ease any of those symptoms. But if you're not looking for the histamine help, um, a water preparation or a vinegar preparation are going to be the best to draw out the minerals, because alcohol does not extract minerals very well. So in terms of a tea, I don't ever just make straight nettle tea, because honestly, I hate the taste of nettle. I know I said that it's one that you can use in food and stuff. I do, but I find ways to mask the taste because I don't like the taste. Some people love it. I have a friend who makes nettle cupcakes and like all sorts of different stuff. So you have to find if you like it or not and what it pairs well with. So like I said, I add it to different blends. So my blend today was lemongrass, nettle, and ginger. So I did like let's see, a third lemongrass. No, probably like 2/3 lemongrass. This is okay, this isn't gonna be good math, but I'm also really tired, so bear with me. Like 2/3 lemongrass, 1/3 nettle, and then like a pinch of ginger, because ginger can be really, really strong. So that's why I'm not giving you a proper 100% there, but you get the idea. But you can play around with it. I normally add at least 10% nettle to any tea blends. It is honestly normally higher than that. Maybe like 20% is probably my average, 20 to 30%. But it's an easy one to mask because it's pretty earthy. But that's part of tea blending, is you kind of learn how to blend for taste and for medicinal value, and if that's a whole skill and a class and everything. But really easy to work into different tea blends. My biggest tip here would be have a list, either written out or in your head, of herb tastes that you like and that are strong, so that when you are working for a specific medicinal reason, you can look at all of those and say, okay, what's going to mix the best in terms of the energetics, in terms of the herbal actions, and then that way you kind of already know that there's going to be something in there that tastes good, but also helps lend to the medicinal value of your tea, if that makes sense. So that would be an infusion with the nettle and the herbs. Obviously, it depends on if your tea is mostly leaves and flowers or if there's a bunch of roots. But in general, you're looking at least a tablespoon of tea blend to 8 ounces of water. And then the amount of steeping time varies. Today, my tea blend, I didn't want to extract too much of the ginger because, like I said, ginger can be really, really strong, and everything else in there is pretty delicate. So I only had mine sit for about 5 to 7 minutes, and I will re-steep that again when I'm ready for a new cup. If you have a really root-based blend that just has like a little bit of nettle in there, or if you're working with the nettle root instead of the nettle leaves, that's also an option as well, even though you'll mostly just see the leaves being worked with. Then you would either do a slow simmer or a decoction on the stove, or leave it to infuse for longer, like closer to like 20 minutes. And then we have oxymels or vinegars. This is another wonderful way to draw out the minerals. Um, it works really well in cooking vinegars specifically, or like in a fire cider, something else that's going to be very powerful to take over the taste. Just that's my personal opinion, though. If you like the taste, you don't have to worry about that. But It is also wonderful for drink additives, like when you make your oxymel mocktails and you're mixing it with other flavors like rose or lavender, or going more of like the spicy route with cinnamon and clove. Um, there's a lot of different ways to mix in your um, herbs into your daily routine, and oxymels and vinegars are one of my favorite easy ways. And nettle works out really well in there. You get that high dose of minerals, you get a little bit of that fresh green, which is also really nice, especially right after winter, or if you have been having to if you've been traveling and having to eat out a lot and you just need something like really good and fresh. Nettle's a wonderful way to add that in. And then we also have nettle powders to work into foods. Now, this is actually one of the first herbs that I ever worked with when I was first learning about herbalism, like 11, 12 years ago. And it was a nettle powder, and I made a seasoning blend because I knew that nettle was really high in vitamins and minerals, and it's easy to add into especially like pasta dishes or things that are really strong tasting. So now I add powdered nettle to a lot of like my meat marinades or my pasta sauces, salad dressings. It's in a lot of things. So you can leave just the powder separate and then just add like some pinches to it, or you can make a blend. I made a powdered mushroom seasoning salt, so it was powdered reishi, lion's mane, and turkey tail, and then powdered nettle, and then I added garlic, onion, black pepper, paprika, and obviously salt. You normally do about half and half, so half herbs, half salt. And I will use that to season a lot of my different foods, and then I'm getting all of the extra vitamins and minerals and extra benefits on top of what I'm already eating. So I hope that you learned a lot about nettle and that is a exciting plant for you to work with. Like I said, it's one of my beginner favorite plants. Anytime someone asks where they should start, I always say nettle. So, so easy and such a wonderful addition to your life. So, let me know what you have made with nettle or how you like to work with it, and stay tuned for the next episode that will be all about nettle folklore. If you would like to find out more about my upcoming classes and offerings, you can find me at rootandwandercollective.com. I'll see you along the plant path.